Okay, good morning. Actually, it's afternoon. We're waiting for everybody to join. Today, we're going to be working on logo design. Welcome to the AB Tech's branding design class. My name is Heather Neff. I'm just going to let everybody participating coming into the Zoom get in here for just a minute so that we can make sure everybody's going to join us right from the very beginning because it's just 3 o'clock. Hope everyone's having a beautiful Thursday afternoon. So we got a bunch of participants coming in. A little housekeeping. So there is a chat function right now, but I prefer if you guys have any questions to use the Q&A function on the bottom of your Zoom. There's a little Q&A thing. So during the presentation, feel free to ask questions through the Q&A as well. And the chat will be open if you guys want to chat back and forth. So hi, Adam. It's nice to see you. So again, we're going to be starting just in a minute. I want to make sure everybody's joining. I see a lot of people keep coming in. So I'm just going to give a minute so that everybody can join. Okay, so I see we're at 14 people on the webinar right now. So welcome everybody. I'm going to be sharing my screen today and sharing a lot of different documents and talking about how to design your brand and logo and all kinds of things like taglines. So I have a keynote presentation that I'm going to be giving, and throughout this keynote, you're more than welcome to get and use the Q&A, or even in the chat if you want. I will be trying to check it as much as possible. Sometimes I don't see it right when it comes up, so I apologize if I don't see your question as I'm talking along. The next thing is we are going to be recording this as well. So if you ever need to want to watch it again, they should have a recording at AB Tech to go get it. Also, my contact information and the PDFs should have been sent to you as well. There is a PDF that is going to be kind of like a print at home on your own printer, work along with us today. So I'm out. If you joined right at the last minute and you don't have these documents, you can contact me at the end. I'll also be projecting them so you can see them, so that you can actually see what we're doing and follow along with the class. We will try to put some kind of work time into this, but it's hard on a webinar, not in a classroom setting, for me to just have 20 minutes of downtime just staring at you guys. So what we'll do is we'll talk about what you should do as homework kind of thing on your own time throughout at the end as well. If we have a little bit of time, so I can stay on and do questions and answers. So I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to open up my keynote presentation. First, I gotta share my screen. So I'm going to share my entire desktop because I'm going to be doing a lot of different things today, popping around. And I'm going to first start off with the keynote presentation. So we're going to be doing branding, designing for your company's style. So a little bit about me. My name is Heather Neff. I am the CEO and the lead graphic designer here at Neff Creative. We're a small marketing and design firm here in Asheville. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm originally a .comer from Boston. My background is in e-commerce design and graphic design, and I have a degree in fine art and painting. So I'm a fine artist and illustrator. I can draw and paint really, really well. I actually have a small fine art business as well. I specialize, of course, in logos and brandings. We also do Squarespace websites and something called user experience design, which is really making the website designed for both Google and your customers, which is a really important thing that everyone should know about that exists, called user experience design. I also make sure that all the files that we do for everything we design are in SVG, scalable vector graphic format, so that everything's crisp and clear on the web. We'll get into that a little bit later. So if you also want to download this presentation, this is the link at the bottom that you can go and get to download this PDF as well. So if you don't have it right now, you can go get it, or you can just follow along for right now. Someone asked, will the recording of this webinar be sent to us? I think if you ask for it, it might be sent to you, but I don't think they just send it out right away. So I'm going to first define branding and kind of get into what we're going to be talking about today. So the brand is the perception of the company in the eyes of the world. Branding involves the marketing practice of actively shaping a distinctive brand. Brand identity is the collection of all brand elements that the company creates to portray the right image of itself to the customer. And the branding style guide shows you your logo in various layouts, your stacked horizontal, reversed out, all the fonts, all the color for web and for print. So this is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Is branding is not just your logo, it's kind of everything about your company. It's your story, it's your mission statement, it's your website, it's your marketing materials, it's your signature and your email. Everything about your brand needs to be consistent and look very professional as well. So branding 101, one of the things that we do when working with our clients here is that we sometimes work with them to help pick the name of the company, because this can be a bit tricky. Some people come to me with something that's really hard to spell, for example. And when you have something like Chrysalis as a name of your company, I say immediately, I have no idea how to spell that, let alone type it into Google or find your domain name. So that's something as you're working with, if you haven't already chosen your name of your company, make sure you think it through that it's available for a .com domain name, and that it's easy to spell, easy to pronounce, and make sure it's words that people can like understand and know what it means, so that you're not trying to do something that's really weird. And if you are, you got to be very careful about how you do that. So make sure you can get the .com. You want to make sure before you do anything else that you're thinking about what kind of colors and the art directions you have. You want to make sure you have your own specific fonts that you've chosen. Usually most of the logo designs that we'll be showing you today have an icon that go with it. So the iconography is also very important as it carries over to your social media. You want to make sure you have a logo that's flexible, so that goes both horizontal and in a stacked or kind of more vertical direction, as you're going to use your logo in many different areas. Again, you're going to need to have a social media icon so that the logo itself has some type of derivative thing that becomes a little circle on social media. And you want to make sure you go and get all of your companies on social media, so you can park those at Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, etc., so that you have your company name. So that's another part of making sure that if you're starting or rebranding a company, that you have that consistency in your name. You want to make sure everything is across, of course, all the channels like that, I say. So everything you do and you design is going to be put into newsletters and print ads, everything. And of course, the voice of your marketing. So you want to make sure that if you're doing something that's very serious, that you have a very professional tone. If you're doing something that's very fun, you want to make sure you have a nice lighthearted kind of messaging. And of course, you want to make sure you write your mission statement, your value position, your differentiation statement, your positioning statement. And we'll work on those today as well. Those are important things that a lot of brands never get around to. They don't know they need one. They haven't taken the time to do it. But now is a perfect time for you and your company to think about refreshing mission statements, thinking about your brand positioning. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And so how you position yourself against or for different things right now are going to reflect on how your business is going to lead into the next year. So also do your competitor research as you're designing a logo and branding. You don't want it to accidentally show up looking just like the person that you're competing with. So there's a lot of companies out there that use similar imagery over and over and over again, because let's say they're an internet security company and they have a lock, but all the same internet security companies all use a lock icon. So how do you stand out from that? Well, you got to do all this research, look at your competitors to make sure that you're not doing something just like everybody else. So that's an important step as well. So branding also becomes an emotion. It can create loyal customers, but it can create also loyal employees. Gives them something to believe in and stand behind, and helps basically people understand the purpose behind your organization. So I'll give you a couple examples too in a minute about how emotions come into branding. You want to make sure your branding is consistent across everything. It really is beyond just making sure your logo is the same everywhere. It's, the tone and the voice and the background images and the colors and the fonts have to be consistent across everything else. And that would be just something that you can recognize just by the font or just by the icon by itself. So this is a little bit of like oh yeah, I recognize these brands kind of moment. So brand recognition is something that you all understand right away. So you want to make sure that your logo is going to be unique and visually enticing, and it has, something that's kind of graphically designed in a way that's very pleasing, but it also has this connection, this emotional response. So many of you are going to recognize all of these brands. I don't need to tell you what the two on the right are. Obviously, they're Apple and Target. So when you see an icon like that and the branding's done correctly and you've seen the icon over and over and over again, you don't even need the words or the tagline to tell you what the company is. And that's kind of just standardized branding recognition. Now, these guys have spent billions of dollars on their marketing. So of course, you're going to recognize these companies. The example of Coca-Cola is one of my favorites to show you what an emotional attachment they do for their branding. I'm going to actually basically say that Coca-Colas are the expert of making you believe and feel something for the company that is completely false. So these guys peddle sugar water, but they're an example of having a kind of a emotional ties that, you know, they make these commercials of polar bears that are so cute at Christmas time, and everything is so wonderful and sweet and kind, and it makes you want to tear up and cry because it's so heartstringing. That's an emotional attachment. So Coca-Cola has done a brilliant job of actually making you feel like they're a good company. They do some charity stuff as well, but they're mostly a horrible company that destroys the planet with plastic and sugar water. So it is one of those things where they're an excellent example of them, how they use emotions to sell something that is something that's not quite the way that I would, you know, want to. So I see I'm reading some chats. Hold on a second. That's funny. The guy in the copyright was changing the same thing. Yeah, that's right, Carrie. So that's kind of a classic example. Now, one of the things I do want to say is that Apple and Target do a really good job as well. Apple is one of my favorites because of how they do their packaging. So this is another example of how branding is not just your logo. It is also kind of the experience you have with the company's website, the experience you have with the customer service, the experience you have with their packaging. All of that leads back into your branding. And so as you're thinking about your logo and where it's going to go, obviously you can see it here on the iPhone's you know, inserts, but someone spent a ridiculous amount of time making this experience of the brand really, really powerful. So when you take out your new iPhone, you're like, wow, this is a really, really cool brand. And they give you stickers so you throw it on your car or on your computer or wherever it is, and you become what's known as a brand advocate. So I personally love Apple products. I have a Mac computer, I have an iPhone, and I like showing this example as like a kind of how it's not just about your logo. A branding is an experience with the entire company. So there's also the story and the background behind you know, a brand. So Nike's a really great example of someone who's done over time some branding that really reflects how they personally feel about their community and giving back and so forth. So one of the things I like to show is a campaign about brands as we talk about, you know, logo design and what it means to be a brand and taglines and mission statements and so forth. These guys put out a video that I'd like to play that actually really shows you that they're not just about sneakers and workout gear. They actually are trying to, you know, tell a story and connect with their audience to have a kind of a collective movement for, you know, basically inspiring people, but also to make sure that people feel included in their brand. So this video here, I'm going to play.
Everyone, no matter their race, your color, your religion, everyone gets treated the same way, whether it's in sports or in life.
I think at the end of the day, we're all positive. We beat any negative.
Everyone's equal, no matter the sport, no matter the gender, no matter the ethnicity, everyone is treated the same.
Equality to me means everyone has a chance to make it in the world.
Treating someone as you would treat your equal.
Equality is understanding that your neighbor is just as equal as you. It doesn't matter what their sex is, it doesn't matter their sexual preference. You're all the same person, you're all one.
Having the same opportunity to be able to achieve or do something that you want to do.
That's why I love sports. You don't have to speak anything. You just compete against doing something you love.
No matter what, people are the same.
So as you can see that Nike's done a really good job positioning themselves in the market to have a message as well as a story. That leads into people becoming brand advocates. And so you can see that people prefer to wear their logo. And that's kind of the mission behind when you are developing your brand and your logo, is to also make something that's going to look good and also people can get behind as part of your branding. So as part of this whole positioning in the marketplace, you want to think about, is your logo going to transfer and also have this kind of, you know, emotional response that is being evoked by these kinds of campaigns. So they also came up with a brand hashtag. This is a little bit kind of more marketing, but I do want to point out that if you have your own logo and you have your own brand, you can also make your own custom hashtags. So Nike went with Nike Equality. So if you search on Twitter or on Instagram for Nike Equality, you'll find everybody who's joined their campaign and tagged themselves wearing their gear and is proud to be part of the Nike Equality campaign. So that's something that you can also do, is create a hashtag for your brand and start using it every single time you post. And this was just a traditional way of making sure that once you do have your brand and your logo and everything all set, that you start thinking about how you're going to market your brand. So these are just a bunch of ways that we would market your company to make sure that you have a consistent voice and look and feel through all of the different programs and ways you can send it out. So this is kind of just a generic list of the ways that you should be thinking about marketing and putting your logo in different places. So taglines, you guys are going to be familiar with some. Like there's one at the very bottom of the screen that's my tagline. Our tagline is "We delight your customers," which basically means that I work really, really hard on your business so that everything we design for you, that your customers are completely delighted by the website, by your business cards. Everything just works. It looks good. It's intuitive. It loads fast. Everything about what we design is great for your customers. And that's because I'm a customer experience designer as well. So as I made my company and my brand and my tagline, I thought about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to explain, but it starts a dialogue as well. There's different ways of doing taglines, obviously, because there's two different ways of naming your company. One way of naming your company is like Bob's Plumbing, and you know that they are a plumber. You do not need to have a tagline that explains we do plumbing. So there's the other way, which is something to the effect of the name is a little bit less clear, and therefore the tagline is used to clarify your services and what you're going to be offering for your company. And also do note that a slogan is a little bit different. So a slogan is based on like an ad campaign. So it all depends on sometimes a brand will be selling a specific product and they will have a slogan around that particular marketing campaign. So some tagline examples. Many of these are going to be very familiar to you. Some of these are kind of slogan-y, some of these are kind of tagline-y. So you can see that there's a little bit of a mix here, but these are pretty classic. You've probably heard most of these. So taglines can become part of your marketing throughout the website, throughout your things. A lot of times they're associated with and connected to the logo. There are ways of using your logo without the tagline as well. So you'll see that in a variety of mixes, but you do want to make sure that when you're working with a logo designer, you have your taglines with the logo and then without, so you can use them as needed. But these are pretty classic. So, Earth Fair. I don't know if they're actually coming back. It sounds like they are over at Westgate, but this is a really great example of their original logo, which is kind of a classic layout. I really do like this as an example because it's easy to read. They have their icon for social media, the tomato that was on the left-hand side, and the text is to the right, and it's in a horizontal format, so it'd be perfect for a website. And then they have this kind of like, you know, brown earthy color for Earth Fair. And then they have their handwritten tagline, the healthy supermarket, right? So it really is a classic way of doing a logo. And this was their logo for quite some time. Then they went under a rebranding campaign. So this is what they did in the future. They changed it around. They put the tagline on top and sometimes on the side, but this example, it's now on the top. And they changed their font and they changed their color. The only thing they really changed the iconography was the tomato, but that got a complete revision as well. So as I think they got bought and rebranded, this is where they went for as well. So when you're doing a rebranding campaign, you can take elements from before and go completely different, or you can actually kind of morph it over time. A lot of times if you have a big, huge jump in the look and feel of everything, sometimes you plan it out. So over time, every year you change it towards the end goal so that you actually step by step. Now, most companies that are large, that are like Pepsi, they will do that kind of like a couple different steps before they get to the final logo. So it's not this giant change. With smaller companies that don't have a ton of people, you don't have to worry as much about bringing them along and making sure they recognize your brand, but it is something to consider as you're rebranding. So this is a kind of a cool, thing. If we're going to talk a little bit about color. So color is one of those things where we all have opinions and emotional responses to color. A lot of times when we're dealing with designing logos, and we also want to start thinking it's not just about your logo, it's about your website. It's about the entire art direction of all of your marketing materials. So one of the things that I highly recommend is this company that you can see it linked here. It's actually open on my desktop, so I'm going to go show you guys what this looks like. This company here will actually give you color examples, and if you hit the space bar, it will just give you other color samples if you're not good with changing colors. And these are the hex colors in here, these 6 different codes. So you can actually grab this and take the color and make it your web color. So as you're looking around, you can see this is a cool tool. You can actually also hit the explore button, and this will bring up all the trending color palettes, which are really cool as well. And you can add all kinds of different things. So it's a really good way of kind of choosing color. And the next thing I want to do is also show you the color picker. So this is this link in here to the coolers. It's a neat kind of program. So the next thing is, if you also just want a free tool that's really easy, you can type in color picker into Google, and this tool will come up, and you can just play around by dragging your mouse around, and it will come up with the RGB, the CMY colors, and the hue, saturation, and lightness stuff. So this is something that's a really fun way to grab, and you can grab this hex color here in the middle. This is again the 6-digit color that makes your websites, and that's a good way to also pick them out. If you're working with a designer, you can say, here's the hex I'm thinking. I saw it on the screen. This is what I'm thinking here. So that's one kind of cool tool as well to utilize. So Linda asked, what is a positioning statement? Linda, we will get that at the end of this presentation. We'll have a whole discussion about positioning statements. So hold your question for then. Okay, so a little bit about the fact that I am a ADA compliant designer, and I really care about how the designs are going to look for people of every generation and race and age. So there's also something out there, with color blindness. And so this is just an example of the different types of color blindness. Now, 8% of all males are colorblind, so it turns out to be quite a huge part of your population. And so I tend to make sure that when we're designing, we think about how is this going to look for colorblind people, and especially if it's going to be something that's going to be very important for like safety. You want to make sure that your colors are going to be translatable for those with color blindness. So this is a sample of what it looks like for a normal person, and this is how that same graphic looks for the other types of color blindness. So there's actually a tool as well that I will show you, this color oracle that you can download and add to your browser. Also, if you want to check this the WebAIM tool, this will actually show you if the contrast is high enough so that it's ADA compliant. So what it means to be ADA compliant is that Americans with Disability Act, there's a lot of people with eyesight problems out there, visual impairments. There's also blind people, but there's a lot more people that have aging eyes, a lot of boomers that are getting old that need a little help with contrast and so forth and font sizes. So as we're designing, we want to make sure that you're inclusive for everybody, and especially those people who have, vision issues. So it is something that's very close to my heart and also very important to do as when you're designing your logo, to make sure that it is going to be Americans with Disability Act compliant. Your website graphics are ADA compliant, and these tools here I'm going to show you are in this this webinar PDF, so you can click on them and bookmark them. But you want to make sure you have enough contrast. So Linda asked, do we save the colors to use in your website? Yes, so there is going to be an explanation a little bit about the overall branding style guides that we create for our clients. And one of the things is making sure you have something for the website as well. So I'm going to now escape and go over to the browser so you guys can see what this means. So as you can see, these are the colors that are on my screen. But if I have this tool called the Color Oracle, which is hidden behind my Zoom, if I say, look at this as a colorblind person, you'll see what happens. So this is a tool that you can install on your computer to see how your website might look. It's a really nice tool for those people who can't see red and greens very well and so forth. So my father-in-law is colorblind, and this is how he sees the world. And so this is something that's very, very common. And they also show you can do the other ones that are also a little bit less common. But that kind of is a neat little tool, again, to show you what it looks like for someone with color blindness. So this is another important tool that I have in that keynote that basically says, this is the tool I use to plug in that hex number, that 6-digit number. And you can see if it's going to pass or fail by this tool is going to say this blue is good, this blue is good, and for graphical interfaces design and components, it's also good. But if you get like lighter, it will start to fail. And that means it's too light. There's not enough contrast, that people with low visibility will not be able to see this, and that it's not compliant to their standards. And so your website, if it's not compliant, can also be sued if it's time. So this is a warning if you have a website for your company, or if you have a brand that you're working on, make sure your stuff is becoming ADA compliant, because there's a huge uptick in lawsuits against companies that are not paying any attention to this, and they're not being compliant to these laws. And you are responsible as a company owner to make sure that if you have handicap parking, that's part of the ADA compliancy stuff. So the same thing has to happen to your graphics, your branding, and your website need to be compliant as well. So this is just something that I use all the time for my contrast checkers, to make sure that everything I design for logos is going to be, perfect for the web. You don't want to design a logo with like a tagline that's a light gray that you can't see, that isn't compliant. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm gonna get back into this keynote. So these links are built in here to that contrast checker and to the color oracle that you can install on your browser if you're interested. So fonts, of course, are a major big deal as a logo designer. This is a huge part of how the art direction and the feeling, of course, comes across. So there's a font called, there's a font type, face type called sans serif, which means it has no extensions on the end. So a serif font has these little doopy-doopies on the end of each of these things. They're little lines that help define the letters. This is a serif font, and this is a sans serif, meaning it does not have those. Sans serifs are usually recommended for the web, although it's, preference at this point, because they're slightly easier to read, because they're a little less bulky. But serif fonts are highly recommended for print, because they're a little bit easier on the eye to read and understand the words. Now, script fonts, they can work, but you have to make sure you don't use something too scripty, because that can be really hard to read, especially for people with low visibility issues and so forth. So I say use script fonts sparingly, and also with the art direction. There's modern fonts, there's historic fonts. Obviously, any of these art directional fonts will bring so much of about what year do you want this company to feel like. I know I run an Art Nouveau painting company. I use a 1920s font for my logo. That really helps with the kind of branding of what I'm actually doing. Now, there's a couple fonts I wouldn't say to use, which is Comic Sans. That just says I'm a 4-year-old child. So if you're using Comic Sans, I'm apologizing, but it's not something you should be using in any of your documents or anywhere ever. It's kind of it's kind of a joke in the industry, as well as using papyrus. It's overused for everything from, salons to, takeout Japanese restaurants. Papyrus is way overused. So you sometimes want to look for an unusual or custom or, really special font so that's yours. A lot of times there's also, by the way, 10 billion fonts. So don't be afraid to go start looking at thefont.com. There's a million places. If you just type in fonts, you'll get gazillions of websites to look at fonts. I tend to also use a lot of bold fonts. And one of the reasons is why when you shrink down your logo, as it gets smaller and smaller, a lot of times the thinner the font, the harder it is to read. And so I tend to use a chunkier, bolder fonts when I can, if it makes sense with the company, just because they do translate a lot better when they're smaller. So I tend to recommend using a kind of a bolder version of the font that you're in. Now, notice that the handwritten fonts, they can be kind of tricky because it's harder for them to read, to be quite honest. A lot of the handwritten stuff is a little bit harder, especially if you're trying to match it on your website. Now, you also have to pick a font that's also going to probably match on your website. So it is a conversation you should be having with your web developer, saying, can I install this font on the site, or should we use a generic, font that's already loaded onto everyone's browser, a web safe font? There's a lot of different conversations you should be having about load time, because if you don't do it correctly and you're trying to use 10 different fonts on your website and you're trying to load all of those things that can make things jump on your website, you might see how that when things load, you're reading something and all of a sudden it shifts. That's one of the most obnoxious things you can do for the customer's experience. So you want to make sure that you choose fonts that also can translate to the web if you can. And that would be an ideal situation as well. If you're thinking about a logo or rebranding at this time, just consider that your website should match so that you have consistency across the board. And so as you choose your fonts, make sure it's also web friendly as well. And also like these whimsical stuff, it all depends on what you're trying to do. Your art direction is really dependent on you and your brand, your company, but the fonts will translate a lot of feeling and it will have a lot of how people perceive the brand. So consider these fonts as a really important choice. So I do a lot of kind of combinations as well. So on the left, you'll see that we have serif fonts, script fonts, but in modern fonts put together, kind of thing. Sometimes bold, sometimes italic, sometimes two different tones. That's very, very common in logo design to see how you have, let's say you have two words in your logo. Sometimes it's best to have one that's blue and one that's black and so forth, so you can see the words a little bit easier. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the examples I say don't do. The very top one is the papyrus, but it's also very low contrast. You can see that that would be really hard for someone to use. It doesn't really read well. It's just a very kind of too light color, so you can see how it's harder to read. Also, the other one next below it, the hard to read, is do not mix caps and low caps and colors like that. It becomes crazy and obnoxious. And also you can see when you do something in all caps with the script, that looks really, really hard to read. And also something like the one that says for weddings, that is literally for wedding invitations. Like, it's not really going to be, unless you're doing something related to wedding, like you're a wedding planner or wedding invitation artist or something, your company should not look automatically like something if the font is derivative of something. So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, you're going to be choosing fonts carefully and working with a designer to make sure everything is going to be really, really professionally and well designed. But this is kind of an example of what you can do with the fonts and the color combinations, just to show you how it doesn't have to be a space between the words sometimes, especially because domains a lot of times don't have spaces. So that's one way to design a two-worded company, is not having any space in between, kind of like this bold name in here. So when you are designing a logo, one of the things we offer in our logo package is that we mock up everything. So where is your logo going to reside? Where is it going to be? So in this example, I designed these labels for Celtic sea salt, and working with our team, we made sure that we went over to Ingalls and we put these on the shelf, and we stepped back and we said, can we read that? And it was a difficult logo because it was from the 1970s that we had to vectorize, and trying to make it get bigger and nicer and readable was a challenge as we transitioned from old packaging to new packaging. And you want to make sure it's legible and readable from a distance. So all, something that's on the shelf is really important about how big is it, especially if you have small size, right? So sometimes I'll be designing, one of our clients, we're doing little, lip balms. And so the logo has to look really good at a tiny little circle on the end of the lip balm. So the end result of where your logo is actually going to reside on packaging, on t-shirts, mugs, is it going to be on the side of a pencil? So something like the Nike logo is so tiny and so beautifully crisp and without any details, translates to incredibly small sizes, including your fave icon, which is those little tiny icons up in your browser windows. So as we're working on something like a logo, we want to make sure you mock it up before you decide, yes, that's the logo, because you want to see, is it going to print well? And I can't emphasize this enough. When a lot of people have a very decorative logo or something with a lot of detail, they tend to forget that when you get it printed real small, it gets in blurry and the lines get all mushed up. And so you have to be careful about what you're going to be doing. Most of your logos are going to go to print. So the smallest it's usually going to be is going to be on your business card, but also you're going to be realizing you need your social media icon to then translate to your fave icon on the website as well. So just make sure you mock things up. That's step one before you decide finalizing your logo. So I'm going to pivot here a little bit and go into the kind of technical side of the graphics. A lot of people, when I start working with them, have never really heard of what a vector graphic is. So all logos need to be designed in vector format. So there's two programs that are very popular that people might have heard of. One is Adobe Photoshop, and the other one is Adobe Illustrator. And Photoshop is just for that. It's for photos. It's a pixel-based program so that you have a resolution, so that if you import a picture from your camera, you will open it up and it will have a certain dots per inch, or DPI, or PPI, prints per inch. And so one of the things that we want to explain right now is that pixels are great for photography, but they're not great for logos. So I see a question coming in. Yes, and so Carrie asks, is that what makes you able to make some pics bigs and they keep integrity and some don't? Yes, so exactly. So the idea here behind pixels is they're rasterized. They have a certain amount of information per pixel and they have a certain resolution. We work in Adobe Illustrator, which you can see is the vector program. And as you can see, it's blown up here on the right. This is my logo, and it's actually fine points and lines that is math-based art. And so it's a program that doesn't use pixels or resolution at all. It's literally just math-based art using this program called Adobe Illustrator. And you can make Adobe Illustrator files that become PDFs and so forth, but this is where you would actually kind of be making sure that you design, whoever's designing your logo, make sure it's in vector format. I can't emphasize this enough so that you can scale up and down without any resolution loss. So Charmaine asks, would you recommend a graphical logo and text logo? A graphical logo and a text logo, meaning one that is maybe a graphic attached to it and one with just the text or the abbreviation. Again, that is dependent on your company. Usually you want to have a logo, not just variants of logos, but you can do something like what Target does, which is they have just their, just their icon and they use it just without any text. That's one way of doing it. Most people have text with an icon that you can separate as well, but usually you have different variations of your logo that can be moved around. So you have kind of like a standardized logo and then you can use it to make sure that your branding is consistent. I personally like a graphical element because it works really, really well in social media. And I'll show you an example in a little bit as well, because social media icons are their own world that we have to worry about these days. So again, if anyone else has any questions about vector graphics and pixel graphics, it's basically math or a photograph. And so you can't use the photographs and blow them up and blow them up. They will look, rasterized and pixelated when they get big. So you have to make sure that all your logos are going to be in vector format. So Carrie asks, can you use a Creative Commons graphic in your logo? If you add words, is that legal? I will have to basically get into that in a little bit. Creative Commons graphic meaning just like clip art. So I would have to clarify a little bit about what exactly your Creative Commons, like if you have the rights to it, you could use that. It wouldn't be very original and someone else might be using the same thing. So I don't recommend using any type of Creative Commons graphics unless you absolutely have to. I would rather use those types of graphics on a website if you're just using icon news stuff. So yeah, if it doesn't have any copyrights, well then what you should be doing anyway is making something unique for your company. Your brand should be you and represent your company. So anything you find that's free, I would say tweak it, make it your own, then copyright it. So that would be something else. Julie asks, well, you might have to change it for a certain percentage. Well, I think there's a lot to say. Copyrights and trademarks is not what we're going to be talking about today. That's a whole other side topic that we could get into. But to say the least, as a branding expert, what I recommend is make your logo you and your brand and make it custom to you so that you are feeling like it represents you and your company and that it resonates with you. Now you can see that I use a lot of hot pink and purple here. It's because I like to put hot pink in my hair and that's something that's very personal to me. So I also wanted a logo that was also a circle so that it would fit really, really well in a social media icon. So let me read the chat here. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter. But basically what I'm summing up here is that you really want to have a vector formatted logo because you want to be able to scale it up and down without any loss. It's also better for print. It'll be super crisp when you go to print. Pixels can get pixelated. So you do not want to use Photoshop for anything that you ever do graphic design wise. Like, I don't care who you are, it's not good unless you're doing some type of like Instagram post or Facebook ad that you need to have graphics for. So if you're doing JPEGs or PNGs, that's Photoshop. Anything that's related to like kind of layout and graphic design, you want to have in vector format. So again, this is a little bit more technical, but it is really important for those of you who are kind of just starting out or just learning. So JPEGs are great for photos. They're fabulous for exporting them for the web. You can get some really good sizes for the web. Most of the website graphics that I put up, I want you to know that should be under 100 kilobytes. And that's how you would want to make sure that you export and control the size of your photographs for load time. GIFs are great for animations. They're also low file sizes as well. PNGs or pings, they are transparencies. That's so you can have like an image that's like a logo image that is done with a transparent background, so you can put a different color behind it. That's the only format in imagery that can be in transparent, but they can also be very large. So watch out on the file sizes for those, because a lot of times when you save them out default, they can be like over a megabyte. Now, a PDF, many of you guys are going to be familiar with, is a portable document format. They are printable, but they are also editable. This is an insider pro tip. If I send you a PDF, I have made that in Illustrator, more than likely for your logos, and it can be sent to any other designer, and it's an Illustrator PDF. So when they open it up in Illustrator, it's still the vector artwork that I've designed. So keep in mind when you get a PDF from a graphic designer, it's probably an Illustrator PDF or a vector-based PDF that you can then open up and edit in vector format as well. So if you are sending anything to print, I highly recommend converting all of your images to TIFFs. I've been doing catalog design for 20 years and they print the best, they have the highest quality. You can actually control a lot of the settings, and you want to make sure that that format is also in CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So there's also the RGB image, which is for web, and those are for red, green, and blue, and that's the screen resolution. And those images you want to have for websites are much different from print. So there is an absolute need to know the difference between CMYK and RGB. In fact, it's crucial, especially if you were to throw up a CMYK formatted JPEG of your logo on the website, the colors would become all weird and you'd be like, what is going on? It's because it wasn't formatted for the web. Also, there's a new format called WebP images that's coming out that Google is kind of doing, and that means that they're actually formatting JPEGs and PNGs, and they're compressing them for speed as well. All right, so I have a question. Let me catch up on it. Okay, Carrie, I will talk to you separately about Word and PDFs and all that kind of stuff. That's a technical question, but most of the time you need to change your fonts to outlines in Illustrator to prevent anything from changing when it goes online, because the code can conflict, and especially if you're not a web developer and you put what you think is a web graphic somehow up, but the code, the words are still technically a font, that can shift on that font is not installed. So you need to change all of your fonts into outlines, which turns into artwork, and that way that file will not change or shift when you go online. So the other thing that I'm going to be teaching about today is scalable vector graphics. So I've been talking about vector graphics. Your logo should be in vector format. So an SVG file is like the way to go for all of your vector graphics, and your logo file on your website should be a scalable vector graphic today. So if you go to neffcreative.com, you'll see that all of our portfolio for our logos are all in scalable vector graphic format, which means they are the vector, not pixels, they're not JPEGs, they're not PNGs, they're scalable vector graphics. They're actually the math-based artwork now online, which means they are crisp and clear, and they are scalable. Scalable vector graphics, that means they can be really, really small or they can be really, really big. Guess what? If you were zooming in on your computer, they stay super crisp. It's pretty awesome. And so you want to also know that this kind of thing can be, if it's a very simple graphic, it can be pretty small in file size. So even with some complicated graphics, if you save it out, it can be very small. So my logo being very complex is only 5 kilobytes. So it loads lightning fast. And if you zoom in on it, it stays super crisp. And also will resize to any mobile device or any type of retina display. And it will keep that resolution, which is whatever it needs to be to look its best. And so I highly recommend, if you have a website, if you have a logo, make sure your website logo is in scalable vector graphic format. So just note that anything that's super complicated, like an infographic that's vector, they can get complex. There can be code conflicts as well if you put in the SVG code. When you're saving from Illustrator, you can actually save out the code that creates the logos. A lot of the logos that are embedded in my website, such as Adobe or Slack or some of those logos, they're all code blocks. I'm actually displaying graphics on my website by the use of code. And if you have a logo that can be saved out as code, you can actually embed this code into your website, and that will display the graphic. It's not even a PNG. It's not a scalable vector graphic. It is literally code. It is the coolest thing ever. I have code logos on my websites, and they're code that make a graphic. And it's like, what is this magic? When I first saw that happen, I was like, how is that even possible? But it's true. The computers have gotten so elite right now and so cool. And if you have code that displays your logo, super fast, super friendly, and super scalable. So that's really kind of a cool thing to know about scalable vector graphic code. And you can also animate that code. There's a program called SVG Animator, and then you can plug it in and animate your logo and do kind of things. Now this on the right-hand side is actually a GIF of an SVG scaling up and down. And so that was something, I can't just put a scalable vector graphic animation into this presentation. So you can see that this is what it can do, is actually take that vector graphic and animate it in different ways, which is really different than how you can animate logos in the past. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay. So we talked a little bit about social media icons. This is kind of some examples of the designs we've done for some of our clients. And I really want to emphasize that as we're going through and designing logos with you, and you guys are all probably thinking about rebranding, or you're designing a company, or you're starting a new thing, and you're thinking about, how do I do this branding thing? What is this logo design? So I put this slide together a couple days ago to update it with some of the latest things that we've been doing. And to emphasize the fact that when you work with a designer, you want to make sure that you design the social media icon at that same time, so it represents and looks like the logo, so that when you get it, it's got to be clear and also readable at a very small size on Facebook and on Instagram and in Twitter, right? It's really small, right? So you need something that's going to be graphically strong and also recognizable as your company. So a lot of companies use a letter. That happens very often from the first, you know, I'm Neff Creative and I have my icon here is an N. And so that's very, very common to do as well. If you don't have like a graphical element in your logo, you can use the font or the typeface that you're using and create something around. But again, graphical logos do have that advantage to then take a piece of that and create a social media icon. But your designer and your branding person should really consider this as something as a separate project that you need to consider. If you have an example like this bee, this is one of our clients, Wilderness Beekeeping. They wanted something that was really complex with a lot of colors and a lot of detail and that kind of stuff. And so we designed this little bee, but we had to make sure that it could be on a dark background. So the only way to really reverse it quickly was to just put the white border on it, which kind of makes it look like a cool sticker, which could be a die cut sticker as well, which is kind of a neat thing. Pro tip, if you have a circle logo, really perfectly fits inside a social media like mine. I spent 3 months making the perfect N for my logo because I really wanted it to stand out and look fantastic in social media. So I purposely made a circle icon for my logo. And as you're kind of doing this, you can see the other two logos at the bottom. These are the reversed out logos of those particular companies. And you can see how their icon would be obviously taken from those two top icons to be translated into social media icons as well. So consider the fact that your logo should have this social media icon built by your designer. You want to make sure something's going to look good, small. Again, getting the same thing is also used what's called a fave icon, F-A-V or favicon. It stands for favorites. And so when you bookmark something in your browser, this little icon for your social media icon should be used for your branding up into the website. So your website developer would put this fave icon or social media icon file. Now that can be in different formats, but usually it's 32 by 32 pixels that displays at 16 by 16, which is really, really small. So you need to make sure that you have a transparent image or a PNG for that if you have a background that you don't want to show. So if you do want to show a little circle, you would have a transparent square that you have as a PNG that you upload into the system. So this is, again, of how important it is for social media is because you're also using it for your fave icon in the bookmarks folder for browsers. So when you're designing your logo, think about how simplified this has to get at the end of the day. It has to be 16 by 16 pixels. So those of you that want to have like a highly decorative illustration of a tree and an ocean and a polar bear and a bag of apples, that's never going to fit down into that tiny little square. So a lot of times I say that there's two different types of logos as well. There's this illustrative type of logos, much like the Celtic sea salt, where there's like a person and there's things and lots of details going on. Then there's like the more classic side of logos. And that's why you see a lot of flat, simplified logos, because you need to make sure that it's legible at these little teeny tiny sizes. And so clear fonts help. If you have a really scripty font, you try to shrink it down, those thin words and thin lines, they don't print very well. So every single time that you have like a thin font or something and you're trying to use it, the smaller you get, the more likely you're gonna have a harder time reading it, or it might just disappear, to be quite honest, if you have real thin lines. So stay away from really thin lines, watch your fonts, and just note that your icons need to be strong and bold and also like made for these little social media things. And most of you are familiar with Facebook and Instagram. You want something that's clear and easy to read and also recognizable at that smaller size. So I explained this first so you can go and understand when we do a branding style guide for a company, this is going to be something that you're going to want to get for your company. It helps you remember everything that we're talking about today. It tells you your print colors. You should have a style guide that's dedicated just to all your CMYK print colors. Again, that's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, the 4 colors that you would pick up at Staples for your printer. That's how it's broken down, is for 4-color printing process. Again, the hex are the 6-digit that the web usually requires. That's changing again to hue, saturation, and lightness in Squarespace. They ask for HSL. Again, you can use that color picker tool to discover your hex colors. Again, that's the 6-digit code for the web for your colors. And these are going to be different. So CMYK, it just cannot display the RGB colors because they're totally different. Print and screen are just so different. First of all, my screen right now is like super illuminated, right? It's got this backlighting. And that's why things formatted for the RGB are so luminous and so much brighter. When you have things that are converted to CMYK, the computer and the screen is already saying, you know, it can't be that vibrant on print or press. It just can't. It's ink. It cannot be illuminated. So we're going to try to make it look like it's going to look when we suck out that ability and format it for those 4 colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay, so when you convert something from RGB to CMYK, it gets dull. It loses this vibrancy about it. Someone's asking a question. So Linda says, does it lose resolution if too much of it's going on? Yeah, exactly. There's issues when you go to print. If you have too much going on color-wise, and you have too much fonts, and you have too many things, you can lose clarity, especially when it gets smaller. Things will bleed. I mean, think about when printers print, they're literally putting ink onto a paper, and paper can absorb and bleed. And so having not only vector helps by far, but knowing what resolution to go to print with that vector is important as well. So someone handling your graphic design is massively important. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with in the past, they didn't bother to ask me a question, so they sent a web graphic to print on a mega thing in their store, and they sent a little tiny, you know, web graphic that we had provided in the web folder to go to this huge project that they needed to blow up. And all they needed to do was ask me, which one should I do? And I said, oh gosh, not that one. You want the reversed out white version on this huge black thing that you're printing, right? So it is absolutely crucial. If you don't know what you're doing with graphics, you probably shouldn't be doing your own graphics. I can't emphasize that enough. There's so many little things to remember. The format, the resolution, the speed of the graphic, all of those types of things are really, really important to, if you know what you're doing, great. If you don't, ask. It's so simple to find out and do some research on things and so forth. Julie says, I work at a print shop. Yes, customers always send the wrong graphics. Yes, I can't emphasize that enough. People, you guys might think what you know. If you don't know what the difference between web and print, please seek out some professional advice before you send anything to print, because you got to make sure your graphics are formatted for print or for web and they're going the right place. Again, if you were to take a CMYK JPEG and put it up online, your colors will look all crazy and you'll be like, what is going on? It's because it's the wrong format. So just keep that in mind. So again, a brand style guide should be done, one for print, one for web. So you should have 2 style guides that are like dedicated to those formats so that you can open them up and grab those files. So you want to keep this as a file that also reminds you of the fonts that you're using, and it's just a really great guideline. You can send it to anybody who's another graphic designer or a publisher or a newspaper or magazines, and they will allow you to pick up the brand's elements to make them look like you. So this is an example of I think this is probably the print one. No, this is the web one. This is RGB. So this is the web style guide that we created for our client Fluid Form, and this is the logo that we designed. On the right-hand side, you see the actual application in their offices in Boston. They're a biotech firm that are printing 3-dimensional actual human hearts out of cartilage. This is the coolest thing ever. So we really wanted to make sure that they had like a modern look and feel. They're using the ability to print into substrate, so they don't actually they can basically print into anything with any materials now. And they're working on some really, really cool things, but it makes this kind of Fibonacci design. So we started designing this lattice pattern, and this is part of their branding packages. So they have this really cool F for Fluid Form, and that we wanted to make it sure it looked kind of like what they were doing in the 3-dimensional printing situation. They wanted, of course, blue for fluid and that kind of stuff. So this is an example of what it looks like to get a style guide from a professional graphic designer. On the left, you'll see that there's the stacked version, and then the same graphic, and it's reversed out onto a dark background. So you want to always, when you're working with a designer, to make sure you get the reversed out version of your logo, because there's a lot of times you want a t-shirt and you don't want a white t-shirt, you want a black t-shirt. And so one of the things you want to do is make sure that the designer has gone ahead and created the reversed out or inverted logo for that purpose. Then you're also going to always want to have a stacked version for like things like business cards and t-shirts, but also this horizontal version The horizontal version is absolutely crucial because most websites these days have a small bar at the very top and they only have this horizontal height of about 1 inch or so online. And so you want your logo to be as crisp and clear and readable as possible. And most text is also horizontal. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a horizontal version of your logo for specifically for websites as well. So you want to make sure you have that accomplished as part of your, branding package. Then you want to, again, do the social media icon. As you can see, we did ones reversed, ones on the white background. And then you want to pull out your color palettes, any type of gradients, and make sure when you're working with your designer that you get those text colors, you get your CMY colors, and you get them written down. What is my fonts? What are the kernings? What's going on with that lettering? So that anybody, if I was to send this to any other graphic designer, they can just click on this and know exactly what to do here and to recreate the look and feel instantly. So your branding style guides are such a crucial thing for you to have to remind yourself what are the fonts, and make sure you get the fonts from the graphic designer. We provide those as well, and making sure that you have everything to install, and that you want to have these kind of branding elements. So this lattice is a branding element that we created for the company, and I'll show you how it's also used in the future. So this is a detail, again, just so you guys can see the zoom in the top half, the stack version, the horizontal version, and the social media icons. This is the detail of the color palettes for the RGBs. You can see RGB. This is how it's formatted, and the hex colors are this pound is always in part of this. There's this pound a part of the code, and the 6-digit code. So each of these codes are going to be different. And you can plug those in and get them into the web. So you can also provide this to your web developers and say, here's my branding package, here's all the hex colors, make my website match this. Now note, these also have to be checked for ADA compliancy. So that's something to consider. You wanna make sure that everything is gonna be compliant for the web as you do this. Now, this is the business card that came with their package as well when we're working on their branding package. And you can see the branding element turned into this little background element on the back side of the right-hand side of the card. And then we had these cards are done with velvet finish, and they had a black center. And these cards came out so well that this guy keeps saying he gets compliments all the time. So having the paper and the finish of the paper is a graphical design thing you should be thinking about as well. Normally I'd be handing out business cards to you guys right now. You could feel what this feels like. My business cards have this double-sided thing as well with a paper in the middle, and they are so smooth with the velvet finish. It has like a nice finish quality that adds to the element of the brand and so forth. So I can't recommend picking your paper and thinking about it as well. So let me make sure I don't have any questions. Okay, great. So the reason why you also want to be scalable vector, and all this stuff is talking about vector, is that sometimes you want to go really, really large. And so here's an application for a trade show where the logo is printed on this massive, I think it was like a 20-foot banner. And this is an example of, you want to make sure you have your reversed out logo ready to go and that it's vector. And it was easy for us to design this for the trade show and get this worked up with them. I think in 2 days, we were able to design all the stuff for the company. So that's kind of an important thing, is to show you that the actual really, how big logos can get. Sometimes you're not expecting them to get, but that's what all RVs are. And, any type of bus, they're all gonna have these vector graphics that are crisp and blown up. And that's what that is when you have these large scale billboards, everything's gonna be vector graphics. So it's nice and crisp. Linda asked, do you suggest and pick up the card stock papers as well? Yeah, I think that if you don't know much about papers, there's we work with a company online, and if you guys want, I can share you the link. GotPrint shares a wonderful packet that they send you in the mail, and that I actually have right here. Something like this. I think it's been updated, and what it does, it has all kinds of paper samples. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but it has bookmarks and postcards and envelopes and letterhead and all kinds of business cards. And if you send away from that, you'll get a lot of card stock and paper stock with glossy and varnishes and spot varnishes and things like metallics. And you can do all kinds of stuff in your branding and your print job that's really important to pick the paper. The thickness and the quality and the shine and all that kind of stuff is really, really important. So gotprint.com is the place where you can go get that freebie. I use them a lot for the different projects that we use as well. They have fantastic process. So it's GotPrint with 1 T. And I will, I can put that in the chat right now. So it's GotPrint. But they have a thing for getting free samples for paper, because paper stock is important, because if you get a business cards that's like super flimsy, it's not so great. You want to make sure that you have decent card stock and so forth. I recommend 16-point matte business cards as like the baseline. I have a link on my website that has all about the business cards and pricing from Got Print as well. So if you go to Neff Creative to our logo section, you can see a whole page dedicated to what the business cards are and their pricing and structure and so forth. So this is an example of the fluid form being on social media, again, showing you how small the logo gets and how nicely that looks when it's brought down in size. And to move on to the next thing is talking about like, okay, so when you're doing a marketing campaign, you want to make sure that everything you do is consistent. So these are some ideas to brand everything you have in your company. So if you haven't branded everything, you should be branding everything. And I'm talking about like your email signature should have your logo in it. So also, I'm kind of like a branding like perfectionist. I want everyone's signature in the company to be the same and to be professional and to look good. And so you want to make sure that you even use the right logo in your email files and so forth. So you have to really have custom logos for everywhere you want them to go. So you want your graphics person to export a specific small logo that's web ready for your email thing, and to make sure that's being sent as in your signature. And that, is an important step to making sure your branding's all the way through. So I like to see your logo in all of these areas, right? I want to make sure your newsletters are branded, anything you do, your website and everything. But you want to make sure that all these marketing things that you can do, you're thinking about the company and the domain and making sure everything is going to be branded and look the same and have consistency throughout everything that you can possibly do. Linda asks, how do you ensure that the logo is not taken? I'm assuming you mean that the design itself is original. So there's no way to promise that. It's actually in my contract saying that we promise as to the best of our abilities that we are not trying to copy something. However, there's literally an impossible thing. All right, so Carrie, you're asking me another question too. So hold the questions to the end right now because I got to explain this one thing. So the logo, if it's not taken, so you want to make sure things are done originally. And when I design a logo, we do some competitor research first of all to make sure that you're not going to look like your competitors. The problem lies in the fact that I can't promise 100% that no matter what I design, without seeing something that was done in Jakarta 10 days ago was done as well that happened to look like this. So what you want to do is make sure that you do some research, you look around, you do some, you want to type in your domain, you want to type in your names that you're using, and look and see if anybody else actually exists first. Before you even get your domain name or make your LLC or your file it for your business, make sure it's unique. I spend a ton of time helping customers make sure that it's going to be unique enough or different enough. Because if you have a problem where it's conflicting and someone else already has the trademark, you're going to be wasting a ton of time and money going down an avenue that's going to be cease and desist, and you're going to have to change it anyway. So my advice is do your research first, make sure it's original, and then when you are working with a logo designer, they should be promising to the best of their abilities that they know that this is original. That's what you want. You want to make sure it's not going to be, clip art. That happens to be very common, by the way, with people who are, let's say, don't have a lot of budget. Now, listen up if you have a little tiny budget right now and you're thinking about designing your own logo. It is very important for you to hear this. Okay, so there's a thing if you type in logo designs and you can find all these little companies out there that will do it for $39 or $59. What you're going to get for that type of cheapy low end kind of stuff is that you get what you pay for. It's probably 100% clip art, vector art that they purchased from a stock photography place, that they downloaded the tree or the bunny rabbit or whatever it is, and they type in a font and they send you a file. Now, you're not going to have the software to open that file or to edit that file, or you're not going to have any revisions. You're not going to have a tagline. You're not going to be able to choose your colors. You're going to just be given your logo. Now, that is a frustrating way to start a company, saying, well, I guess I hope I like it. And if you don't like it, it's going to eat at you for the rest of the company's time. You want to make sure that this logo really represents you, that you resonate with this logo, that you want to take the time to design this logo. You want to make sure that you have revisions and changes so that it is perfect. It's got to be awesome and it's got to be unique. I mean, I can't tell you, there was one person that came to me and they're like, here's my logo. And I was like, how did you get this? They're like, oh, it was a quickie thing. I got it for 50 bucks. I love it. And I was like, cool. And I did a reverse search of it. And like 4 other companies were using the exact same design. So note to self, you get what you pay for on the internet. And also a lot of times when you're doing that with a designer who's not necessarily going to be responsive or do lots of changes, or in a different time zone, they might be cheap, but it's going to be frustrating and so forth. So just keep in mind when you're doing your branding, this is not something that you want to cheap out on. This is something you want to pay attention to work through these things, to think about all the different aspects, to make a true, strong, really professional brand. If you want to succeed, you got to put the time into this first step and to make sure that art direction is good and it's compliant and it's original and it's going to make you stand out from the crowd and your competitors. So I'm at the point where we're at the branding questionnaire. You guys should, some of you may not have this because you joined towards the end of the day, right before the class, but those of you who have the PDF, this is where we're going to kind of start thinking about working together on your branding today. And if you don't have this keynote, you can also download this at this link right now, and you'll get this whole keynote with all of the links and everything I just talked about, with all of the things that we're talking about. So that's kind of a nice way to you know, if you have any follow-up questions on that as well. So since we have an hour left, I'm going to get into the actual questionnaire as well. So if you wanted to work with my company and you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, I'm just going to have Heather do it. There's a link to my full questionnaire. There's an extended questionnaire on my website that will submit to me all your questions and your answers, but you can also use it just for yourself. To think about all the extra extended questions, because this is what we have sent to you as a PDF is really the basics, just the beginning of things. But before I work with anybody to do their logo, I need to know a lot about you and a lot about your company and who you are and what you're trying to do and who your customers are, who your demographics are. Who are you trying to reach? How do you want to look for those people? Make sure that we get to know you really intimately so that we have an interview, we go over your questions, we get to know what you're trying to achieve, what the art direction is, you know, and then we question a lot of different things to make sure they're all on the same page. And we question, what are you thinking? What do you want? What's your favorite color? You know, are you thinking, you know, a feather, or are you thinking an acorn? What's the iconography that would make sense for your company? And is there anything that I need to know that would help me design something that would be really custom and unique to you? What is it that makes this special? Like, is it your father's eye color? You know, what is it that makes you want to use these colors or these fonts or something? So I understand and can really reproduce something that is you, right? So starting off with the basics, what's the name of your company? Is it easy to spell? Is it taken? And note to self, this is really important to all of you out there. This is really, really important. Listen up, y'all. So if you go to GoDaddy and you start typing in GoDaddy like domains and you don't buy your domain right then and there, they will take it and they will snatch it 20 minutes later and they will put it in this auction thing and they'll make you pay like $80 for it. It was originally like 12 bucks and now it's 80 bucks because you hesitated and didn't buy your domain name. So if you want to find if your domain's taken, type it directly into Google and hit enter, and if it's available, it will come up as like a, you know, it's not really taken kind of thing, or another company will say it's for sale. But one of the things you can do is some research by typing it into Google, but do not use GoDaddy unless you're really ready to buy. Okay, so I want you to all remember that tip. Do not buy, and like if you go domain shopping, buy it then and there. Do not hesitate. You will be screwed for 3 months until they let it go. But they tend to take all your domains that you've researched and they say, oh, they were thinking about it. They know your IP address. And only you will be 3,000 times more expensive. So duly note that is really an important thing. Yes, so if you check to see if the name, type it into Google itself, like just type in the domain you want and hit enter and see if it exists. That's one good way of a trick around using something like GoDaddy or a domain buying tool. So you want to make sure that the domain is available and you can purchase. And I find that should be the number one thing to do is name your company wisely. Go get the domain, right? Don't hesitate, just buy it. It's like 12 bucks. And also I highly recommend getting the privacy on your domain because it's like $8.99 and that will prevent all of the world knowing that you just are starting a new company. So if you buy the privacy for like, I think it's like not $8 or something, they won't share your information out there. But if you don't get the privacy, all of a sudden you'll be flooded like, hey, you need a logo, you need a website, you started a business, would you like some SEO services? And your inbox will be inundated with all these people because it's public domain when you buy a domain. So just note that privacy factor is worth like the $8 just to keep people out of your inbox, a little thing. And so some of the tagline ideas, we work with clients on taglines a lot. So the way that our branding package works is that we do 3 rounds, 3 different logo designs with 3 different logos that are totally different from each other with 3 different taglines. And that's with us talking to you and reading all your answers and researching your competitors. And we come up with taglines that will work for your business. That's our job, is to come up with those taglines. And I will wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I'll be lying there. I'm like, oh, I got an idea. You know, I scroll down the tagline ideas. So it's really important to know that the creativity and the thought process is not just an instant thing to come up with a tagline. It isn't just like, oh, I have a tagline. No, it should be thought about. The words should be thought through. The spelling should be easy. They should be common words that are easy to understand and spelt very commonly as well. If you can also add SEO into those taglines, that's another tip too. If you can actually use some marketing tips and put some SEO keywords in there in your tagline, that can actually be helpful to use your tagline as an SEO thing throughout your website as needed as well. So that's kind of a cool thing. So Anne asks, do you just Google the company name or do you need to ask specifically the domain name? I would type in the actual domain that you're looking for to see if it exists. So type in, you know, the name of the company.com and hit enter and see what comes up. Because if you just type, you can also do both. Actually, I refrain, do both. Type in the company name, see if it exists. Because a lot of times I was just looking to do a side project and I wanted the name Autumn Sky. And so I typed in Autumn Sky. And sure enough, autumnskyart.com came up, and I was really bummed because I wanted that for myself as another project. And that person had dominated search engines for that term. They had bought autumnskyart.com, so that autumnsky.com was available. However, their company had dominated all of the search engines, and there was no way that I wanted to compete with somebody who is doing the exact same thing with the same name. So that research was really important. Step 1, so not even buying anything, is making sure that it's available. So Julie asked, what if I don't have a specific product for my business? Like I want to design invitations and make cakes and make jewelry and et cetera, kind of creative stuff. Can I use my name like Julie Louise Design? Of course you can. If I don't want to commit to one product or service, I highly recommend that. In fact, I moved my company from siteimages.com to neffcreative.com. We're doing more than just images. We are not just graphic designers. We do Squarespace websites. We do Facebook ads and all kinds of other kind of creative projects. So we decided to use the name creative to kind of cover that a little bit more generically. For my art business, I go by my middle name. So heathershireen.com is my art business, my fine art. And I chose that specifically so that if I wanted to do any type of like embroidery or watercolors or oil colors or whatever whatever I wanted to do, it could fall under my name. And if I choose to change whatever I want to, if I want to write a book, it could still be under my domain name. So I highly recommend purchasing if you're creative, think about words that make sense that can be more encompassing. Because if you're a creative or an artist like myself, we change our mind, we change our mediums. we like to do lots of different things. And sometimes it's best to worry about that as well before you start the thing. One of the other things I want to note is that I keep my website separate. So I have my art and fine art, my paintings. I have beautiful artwork of Art Nouveau portraits of women that are done with gold leaf, and they look like Gustav Klimt and Alphonse Mucha. They are large scale, beautiful portraits of women, but they are not on my Neff Creative website. I keep that completely separate, and it's because the branding should not be mixed. So if you're a creative that's really focusing only on pottery, but you also dabble in watercolors and you also do all these other things, you could be diluting your brand by having so many things on your website that maybe you should split your website and make sure the branding is strong for each of the elements that you're trying to push, and so that you're well known and really kind of focused and consistent with your branding versus trying to confuse people on what you do. I get it, it's hard. I am a small business and we do things like user experience design and customer experience design and user interface design. And some people never even heard of any of those things. But one of the things I like to do is highlight the most popular things that make you money, and then also, provide links to things that exist as well on your website. So Kimberly says, thanks for that. She's also an artsy person who keeps changing her mind on what she wants to focus on first. So yes, so you might want to keep your branding separate. So I literally have 2 websites, 2 domain names, 2 separate websites and 2 different companies based on the fact that I am a creative artist that has a design company and a fine art. And they are totally different, so therefore I don't mix them. And I used to, when I was 20 years ago, I had everything that I designed on one website, and that was just not really going to be great for the branding as well. Okay, so the brand colors, I want you guys to, and again, this is more stuff I could do in class time, but you want to make sure that when you're picking the colors that you're thinking about, you can use that color picker in Google. If you have another window open right now, type in color picker and you can start looking at hex colors for your logo and start picking them out, or you can use that cooler colors website thing link I sent you. That site's pretty cool to generate palettes if you're not good with color. The other thing is hire a graphic designer. They're really good with color. So, but you want the colors to be really, really you as well. Again, I like to put hot pink in my hair and listen to electronic music. And so my logo really reflects a part of my heart and part of my personality. And also I wanted to look technical and kind of mobile appy and 2020-ish. And so when I redesigned and rebranded my company, I took into account changing the name and so forth and getting the domain name and that kind of stuff. So it's really, really important to think about those types of things. So the colors are really important. People feel like red is passion, but it also can be like stop, warning, bad, evil, scary. So choose your colors and work with a designer to make sure that your branding represents your company and the feelings, the art direction that you want. It's really, really important to make sure that your colors are going to reflect and also they're going to be ADA compliant. So I want you to, on your own time, go find some color picture, go to the color picker and think about colors. Think about what is your favorite color? What, and also things like, if you're doing an outdoor store, you wouldn't want hot pink necessarily because that doesn't make sense for the stuff that's going to be in your store or things that are the clientele. It's going to be a burnt orange and an army green and black and grays and charcoals. That's outdoor stuff, right? So sometimes you want to do the research to say, well, the clientele and the research and everything else says that I should look kind of in this arena to match my competitors because it doesn't make sense to be hot pink and polka dots when everybody else is in like kind of a neutral outdoorsy type color scheme. So take into account your demographics, who your customers are, or if you really want to stand out, you can stand out, but you want to make sure that it's going to work for you and your branding and represent you. Linda says, any idea for a math tutor? Well, we would have to talk to you, Linda, about who you are and who you're tutoring. So is it kids, is it adults? Those really make a big difference. So again, that's maybe the one use I might use is the Comic Sans is for if you're teaching 4 to 6-year-old kids, we might put it in there. But again, it all depends on your clientele and who you are and how you want to represent yourself and your company. Because most of us here, basically chat in, are you the owner of your company right now? Are you the CEO, the owner, the person who's designing, the head honcho? Usually a lot of the solopreneurs, we get to choose the branding because it's our company and it represents us. It's who we are. You want your brand to like sing and you want to be excited about your logo too. You want to be able to, at the end of the day, be like, I am so excited about my logo. I'm going to put it on t-shirts and wear it all around and everywhere I go, I'm going to put it on my car. I love my logo. That's like the goal, is to make sure that you're like, I love my logo. It's so good. It's so me. Oh my God. It's so representative. So you want to make sure it's, something that really resonates with you more than anything. So the fonts, again, choose your fonts. You can go to defont.com. They are a great free resource to download a bunch of fonts and go looking for fonts. Again, you want to stick to sometimes the classics. So for example, if you're doing a newspaper or a newsletter and you're a writer, maybe to stick with Times New Roman. It's simple, it's easy. Everyone knows it. It's all installed on every browser, on every, machine that's out there, every phone. So it's easy to load, it's fast, it's a web-safe browser font. Or you can actually tweak fonts. We'll get into that in a minute as we get into Adobe Illustrator, where you can customize your fonts as well. So I'll show you that as well when we jump into the actual design program. So mission statements is something that we should also talk about before we get into the design thing. We have a little bit of time left. We have 45 minutes. So what I'm going to do is going to go through how important a mission statement is towards your brand. Your homework is going to be write your mission statement. Surprise, you got to do some homework. So one of the things you want to do with your mission statement is to kind of understand what it means. And I'm going to read this so you guys can hear it as well. It is a key tool that can be as important as your business plan. Hopefully you guys have a business plan as well. It captures in a few succinct sentences the essence of your business goals and the philosophies underlying them. Equally important is the mission statement signals what your business is all about to your customers, employees, suppliers, and the community. Now, your mission statement should be on your website. Now, if it hasn't been updated in a long time, a lot of times people on these webinars and in classes will say to me, I'm rebranding right now. And man, you're right. I haven't actually looked at my mission statement in over 12 years, and boy, has it changed or it's shifted. Now with things changing and we're all in a new world, and there's a lot of things going on, now's a really good time to check in with your branding and how are you going to represent your brand this summer, this year, next year. How are you positioning yourself to make sure that your company is going to be representative of how you are doing business? So it could change as well, because maybe it's all online now all of a sudden, for example. So I'm going to read you my mission statement. Neff Creative serves as your remote but local, on-demand marketing and design team. We help grow your business with consistently branded marketing materials and digital campaigns. We focus on Americans with Disability Act compliant graphics, assuring that our experiences are inclusive for everyone. So the key elements of a mission statement are the value. What is the value of the business to both customers and employees? Inspiration. Why should people want to work for the company? Plausibility. Make it sound reasonable. And specifically, tie it back to the business somehow to make sure that you're actually using an example from what you actually provide as a service or a product. So I like this one, this mission statement from Honest Tea as well. So the mission statement from Honest Tea is, Honest Tea seeks to create and promote great tasting, healthier, organic beverages. We strive to grow our business with the same honesty, integrity as we use to craft our products, with sustainability and great taste for all. So that's an example of using words, and they're sustainable, they're honest, they're transparent, they have organic stuff. That kind of stuff, those kind of keywords really resonate with your customers as well. Right, so you should have a copywriter in the company, your voice, the marketing person who's writing the copy for the company. So when you're writing your mission statement, I want you guys to take, again, this is something you can print out the PDF that I sent you and just write on it, or open it up a new Google Doc or email, any type of electronic thing. You want to spend some time on your mission statement. A lot of people skip this kind of important step when you're designing your logo. This mission statement should actually be done right as you're starting this whole process, so that you have an updated mission statement and you hand it to the designer so they can really understand what you're trying to do and understand what the tagline should be about. Because these words that you use can be used in your tagline, they could be used in your company name and your marketing materials. And this mission statement should definitely be somewhere on your website, usually in the About Us page or something to that effect as well. So the value proposition. Your value proposition clarifies to the customer what they should do. I'm getting tired. Your value proposition clarifies to the customer that they should do business with you, buy your product, recommend your services, or engage in your social media channels. You must convince the customer that your business offers more value than the competition, and you must explain how you will meet those needs. So the value proposition. Those are really a way to identify all the benefits that your product or your services offer, and that you can describe those benefits that make them valuable. So writing your value proposition, again, is a thing which you can do in your own time today, or tomorrow, this week, next week, but you want to put it on your to-do list. Write out your value proposition. So really, it's about what value do you offer and how you are going to actually deliver that value. You want to identify your customer's main problems and connect this value with the buyer's problem. So you want to make sure that you have some value going on here, and then how you differentiate yourself as the preferred provider of this value. So again, there's lots of different examples of things like the value proposition. So Infusionsoft says, small businesses, sales and marketing software, get organized, grow sales, save time. Stripe says, payment infrastructure for the internet. Whenever you're building a marketplace, mobile app, online storefront, or subscription service, Stripe has the features you need. Shopify says, Shopify is everything you need to sell everywhere. So it's about kind of like making sure that you have the value and making sure that statement is there. And this is, again, great stuff for your marketing department to use as well, and to put these thoughts together so that they can use it on the website and all your social media posts, et cetera, et cetera. So the differentiation statement is a strategic brand differentiation is the positioning of your brand against others in a meaningful way that matters to your consumers. In terms of branding, differentiation can relate to any combination of the following, from the physical characteristics of your product or service to the emotional response your brand evokes, aspects of its presentation, its price point, such as very low or very high, your brand story, or even the customer experience of your brand as a whole. So this is a really important thing because there's so many businesses and you have so many competitors. Most people have some type of competitor out there that's doing something similar to you. If you don't, it's even harder sometimes because no one knows you have a new unique business, that you're offering unique services. So the differentiation service statement is actually really kind of critical as well, that a lot of people skip over when they're doing their branding. Why do you stand out? What's different? What makes you so much, better or different from your competition? Why should I buy from you? Why should I buy your services? Why should I hire you? Really clarify that for me and make a sentence. This is why. I might be more expensive, but you get what you pay for because the services are so much better and you're going to be getting this white glove service and you never have to worry about anything. And I always pick up the phone. My customer service is amazing and the packaging is beautiful. And boy, you're going to have the greatest experience ever with my entire product. Or that you're saying, I'm the cheapest, dirt cheap, super awesome, super easy, come get it kind of thing. So how do you position? This is a really important thing with your brand. And also, if you're going to be doing coupons and discounts and you're the cheapest, that affects your brand. You notice that luxury brands never offer discounts. You don't see Mercedes going 30% off, buy now, right? You want to see that luxury brands tend to make sure they position themselves as you're the best, and that's it. You're just high quality. You're going to never compromise on your price because you don't compromise on anything else. And so the positioning of how you put your marketing materials together really reflects on people, how they view your brand. Again, your logo can affect that too. So high-end luxury brands are usually very sleek and elegant. There are usually a lot of black and white ones. They have a lot of, little flourishes and so forth, or they're very, very minimalistic and they have like metallic, and they then have very fancy business cards with say gold or silver foil finishing. So how you position your brand and how you design your logo, think about where it's going to go, who your audience is. Are you going to do flourishing embellishments like silver foil to show like luxury and so forth? And then budget all of this out so that you can support your brand as it goes through the system as well. And so lastly, we have the positioning statement. It's also positioning strategy, or brand strategy. And it basically says brand positioning statements are often confused with company taglines or slogans. So these statements guide the marketing and operating decisions of your business. A positioning statement helps you make the key decisions that affect your customers' perception of your brand. Now, these are never usually used online or anything else. It's much more of an internal process to position and get all of your staff to know exactly where you're heading and how you're heading it. And sometimes it's, when you write these things out, of course, you get to influence and change other marketing decisions and create, by accident slogans and that kind of thing. But it's something to also consider as you're working on all your homework, is this, kind of positioning statements. So my Neff creative positioning statement says, we are passionate about designing for your customer's experience. Our goal is to guide them into becoming a new customer and to help you keep your customers happy for life. We focus on Americans with Disability Act compliant graphics, assuring that experiences are inclusive for everyone. So we're really trying to say that basically our positioning statement is that to you as our client, we want to make sure that your clients are like loving you, like everything is great and it works and it's clear and it's branded and boy does it look good and it's professional. So that's like our goal, is to make sure that you look good, so that's how we position our statement. Now Coca-Cola's positioning statement is very different. So I'm going to read this as well. So Coca-Cola says, for individuals looking for high quality beverages, Coca-Cola offers a wide range of the most refreshing options. Each creates a positive experience for customers when they enjoy a Coca-Cola brand drink. Unlike other beverage options, Coca-Cola products inspire happiness and make a positive difference in customers' lives, and the brand is intensely focused on the needs of customers and consumers. Now that is a very fancy positioning statement. but it's also Coca-Cola. As you can read, you can hear like the kind of the marketing in that. So yeah, Carrie says psych. So yeah, so okay, so that's another one. So Nike's positioning statement, right? Okay, this is good. I'm gonna do something. Oops. Oh gosh, what did I do? Hold on. Where's my Zoom? There we go. All right, sorry about that. I wanted to read this Nike one to you guys in person without the screen on. So you guys all still with me? Say hi in the chat. Okay, so you guys are still listening. Awesome. It's hard when you're doing a webinar and you're all alone and you're just staring at a screen the whole time. So it's good. Hello, guys. Sorry. All right, technical issues as I'm jumping out of the keynote. So I wanted to read this, the difference between Coca-Cola, which was like, yeah, we're amazing and our customers love and have happiness with drinking your Coke, right? So Nike has this positioning statement, which is a little bit different. For athletes in need of high quality fashion and athletic wear, Nike provides customers with top performing sports apparel and shoes made of the highest quality materials. Its products are the most advanced in the athletic apparel industry because of Nike's commitment to innovation and investment in the latest technologies. Now, you can see the difference between those two companies and how they position themselves, right? Coke is basically saying, we're amazing, we make people happy, but it's a marketing thing, and for certain you can hear it. But with the way that Nike's taking the time to do this, they're really saying we're using technology to do these really cool athletic wear. So think about these positioning statements. They can make a difference on your staff and how your company kind of perceives everything as well. And so these mission statements, the value position, the differentiation, and positioning statements are something you should take time to do. Again, we're not in our AB Tech classroom today, so I'm going to have you guys, print this out, take your time, think about this. This is not something you should be rushing as well. You should be thinking about the vocabulary words and the spelling and the grammar and get it right and put some time into these things. Again, branding and should not be done overnight. You shouldn't just whip out a logo and here's my tagline, maybe if I have one kind of thing. You want to make sure you think these things through, as it's super, super important. So I'm going to actually get into some designing stuff now so you guys can see what it's like to actually be in the computer. So I'm going to do a couple things here first. All right, so for those of you who are on did anyone not get the PDFs? Do I need to send anybody else the PDF that is the printout? If you didn't get the PDF, put your email in the chat and I will personally email you the documents as well after class so that you guys get this PDF of this presentation. And that is basically the questionnaire to go through. So I'm gonna share that as well. Okay, so Kimberly, just send me your email as well. Okay, so we get some people here. All right, so I'm gonna share this as well. So let me just take a couple of seconds here that I can screenshot this real quick to make sure I get your emails. Okay, so Linda and Stacy, put in your email for me too. So we got Anne didn't get it, and Charlotte didn't get it, Linda didn't get it, and Stacy didn't get it. So, all right, so I got some more emails coming in. So when, all right, so just keep putting your emails in there. I'll try to take a screenshot so I can type these in later. So I sometimes say goodbye and I forget to check my chat and so forth. So I want to make sure I get these as well. So also you have my email address. It's going to be heather@neffcreative.com. So shoot me an email at any point so that we can basically get together. I also do free hour consultations. So if you want to run something by me, right now we are really quiet here at Neff Creative because of all of the world changing. It's been a little bit difficult for everybody. So if you guys are starting off a new company, I do a lot of business, business to business growth kind of conversations about where you are, what your budgets are, what you can accomplish, what kind of website you might need. We do specialize in Squarespace websites and small business marketing and Facebook ads and a lot of the kind of digital marketing that you might need at this time. We also do a lot of logo design and branding packages, and that is a whole conversation what I'd love to have, which is like explaining how the package works. You get literally 6 different logos given to you with 6 different taglines, and you get to work with us to make sure that it's customized to your needs, that you love it. We mock things up. We make sure that we have social media icon, and business card all included in that. So if you want to talk to me, I do free hour consultations all the time. At the end of that PDF, there's a link to my booking software that you can just book a time with me anytime on the calendar, or just give me a call. So anytime you want to chat, I'm around, just being cool. So I'm going to share my screen one more time and give you the whole thing. All right, so this is the PDF that you guys, some of you guys didn't get and some of you guys have, that Dwayne had sent out from AB Tech. And so what we'll do is make sure that you get this as well. And this is kind of like an overview of what we were just talking about. And this kind of is the questionnaire part here. So as you can print this out, you can start, working on your tagline. You can start working at your hex colors, your color pickers, your fonts. You can actually start sketching ideas. I love it when people come to me with like, here's my napkin that I sketched on at the restaurant. And it's something I have this idea for. And it's like this little stick figure holding a flower. And you're like, oh my God, it's so cute. And then you turn into this beautiful flower with this person, it's like, so it can be really, really kind of fun that way too. So I have some more people coming into the chat. I want to make sure I get everybody's email. So yeah, please put your email in the chat if you didn't get it. Just type in your email address. I'll try to make sure you guys get it. Also, you can follow up with AB Tech and get the, this is being recorded as well, this whole thing. So if you guys want to rewatch this whole presentation, you can, and that would be kind of a good thing to do as well. But again, we'll get you those PDFs for you and make sure that everybody gets it. So I'm gonna take one more screenshot real quick so I don't lose all these emails. Just contact Dwayne Adams at AB Tech. He's the facilitator of this particular webinar today through AB Tech. So they will have a recording of this on the cloud. So I believe that's how it's going to work because I'm using their account right now. I'm kind of a host. It's all this webinar stuff we're all learning due to COVID. So everything's new, and we will make sure to get it to you. So, all right. So you will have this PDF to print out. There's also the secondary page that has a place for you to put in your mission statement, your value proposition, your differentiation, and your positioning statements. Again, these are what were in the presentation, but it gives you an area to like organize your stuff and to print it out. And it has my contact information again at the bottom. So if you ever want to like reach out and be like, Heather, I have no idea what I'm doing, please just call me and be like, Heather, help. That's absolutely fine as well. So I wanted to show you one of the things that we do for our companies as well as we put together a PDF that is kind of like a practical guide to your brand. We also send you a separate PDF on how to use all of your image files because we provide like 60 different images. One's in a print folder, one's in a web folder. And you want to have something like this where the designer provides kind of a guide on how to use your brand. You want to make sure your style guide's been told. We create this for our clients as well to show them how to use your print colors, how to use your web colors, and kind of give them an overview, also to share with staff or to put in, save into your file. So you have not only the Illustrator PDFs, but you have this kind of like how to use your, the company branding style guide. You want to have what's called clearing space around all of your logos so you have enough room around them so that there's no crowding. You never want to stretch your logo, change your colors, screw with anything that you just don't want to change it. You want to make sure that you're consistent across the board. And again, that means you have to have the right software and the tools and know-how to make sure your graphics look the best across every single project. And so we do this as well to show you what the reversed out logos look like. So you can see the ones here on the right are the reversed out logos that we provided for the client. But again, we provide them like that so you can put them on top of any colored background. They are meant for a dark background, but you can use them on any color background that you might have. So it's like if the website's dark blue, you can throw that graphic on there. But we can make sure that you understand that the graphic sometimes this text right here is white and you won't see it at all. And you'll be like, where's my graphic and the logo? And it's literally just a white blank screen. You're like, where's the logo? And you're like, it's there. It's just you can't see it because they always have a white background no matter what you do in the graphic backgrounds, unless you have some settings changed. But usually you just see it as a white background. And so when you open up a PDF and it's white, you're like, what's going on here? It's because the file itself is meant for the dark background. So this is an example of what we give our clients so that you know how those work. So the actual file is going to be really hard to see, especially if you get an attachment in an email, or if you open up a PDF and it's solid white, it might be kind of confusing, but that's what's happening. And I wanted to explain that as well. So, so the next thing is, of course, is social media. And one thing to note with social media is that you can't really make a circle graphic. You have to make a square that has a transparency background with a circle in the middle. So when you're uploading your graphics into Facebook, for example, and you want it to be cropped into a circle, we actually provide you with both files. One is a square with a background, so when it's cropped, it doesn't have any space issues around it, and so that it's made specifically to be cropped into a circle. And then we also provide images like this, which are actually transparent around the edge, and that is something for like uploading into the favicon, so you see the circle and not the background as well. So just note that when you're uploading into Facebook, Instagram, so forth, you're going to upload the square with the background color that's going to be cropped down by their system. So you should have two different types of files for your social media icons as well, transparent one and one with a background. So keep that in mind as well, that you'll have square files. All of the images have to be some type of a dimension that is either rectangle or square. There's no such thing as a round image. So keep that in mind as well. And if you have extra additional questions on that, give me a shout out at any point. But I wanted to show you that you should have something like this given to you as well as kind of like a guide to your brand that you can share. I'm going to now move over to Illustrator. So Luther says, I would the company branding, like the branding company guideline, and that's a black bear or polar bear. I believe it's going to be a black bear. So let me get you some more emails are coming in here. So I want to take some more screenshots so I don't lose these emails. So hold on, everybody. You're going to catch everybody who didn't get this email. One last final, hopefully, screenshot if I can get my screenshot to work. Okay. That way I can make sure everybody gets this whole thing. All right, so thanks, Casey. Thanks, Luther, Carrie, Julie, Tanara, Brittany, Kimberly. Awesome. Yay. Okay, so we're going to be moving over now to, I'm going to move down my chat a little bit so I got some stuff you guys can't see. All right, so try to put the questions in the Q&A, okay? And we'll definitely, hopefully, move on to the next chapter here. So I'm moving actually into the Adobe Illustrator program. So we have a little bit of time left. We have 20 minutes. So if you have any questions, start thinking about what you might want to ask. But I wanted to go through Adobe Illustrator really quickly so you can understand the differences between Photoshop and Illustrator. This is the program that we design our logos in. And it really helps when people see what you can do when I get into the program. So first of all, this is a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, kind of size document. It is also in RGB, which you can see up in here, which means red, green, blue. So it's a screen resolution, so it's nice and bright. You'll also see that some of the other files up here are going to be in CMYK, which you'll see up here, like it says CMYK up here. So that's the type of format the document actually takes on. So it's either web or print, and that's why you have to be very careful about what format you're using as well. So one of the things you can see here is this is a vector graphic that I have, and when I click on it, you'll see that it's not pixels, it's actually line artwork. So when I say this is actually math-based artwork, I'm not kidding. This is all like all little points. Now these points can be used as a pen tool. You can manipulate them, you can change them, you can thicken them, you can put what's called a stroke on them, which is a line that goes on the inside, outside, or they have different points and so forth. There's a lot of different things you can do with Adobe Illustrator to make something that's vector. All right, so one of the things I want to show you is that the program can also do rounded lines, like so. You can also just move things in general and change shapes. So you can change colors, you can add gradients, but all of this stuff is vector artwork. And as you can see, I can also delete a piece. I can change the way the shape is, and I can play around with everything in here, right? So you can also align stuff and move things around. This program is really, 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 really powerful. And so one of the things I wanted to show you is that this is not a photograph. This is how vector artwork looks. And when you use it properly, this is how you can turn it into a scalable vector graphic and play around with things. So I'm going to undo what I just was playing around with here. So the other thing is that how important the serif and sans serif fonts look. Can you guys all see this okay? I want to make sure that you guys can see my screen. Okay. So type yes if you can see serif fonts and sans serif fonts on the screen. All right, thanks, Kim. All right, so serif fonts, again, have these little, I don't know what they're called. They're called serifs. They're like feet and end points on the fonts. And there's a million different serif fonts, like Times New Roman is a serif font. All right, thanks, guys. So what I want to do is show you that serif fonts, there's a million of them. And you can do all kinds of changes of them, and sans serif fonts again look like so. So when you're talking to your designer, note that those are very, there are two types of fonts. Those are the two types of typefaces, and the font families come with all kinds of typefaces as well. There's a million choices of the fonts themselves. I'm going to try to show you guys just a few of the fonts that I have installed in my machine. And the program itself, as we can scroll through, will basically allow me to see what it's going to look like. And I can also filter these by script fonts, sans serif fonts, right? So you can actually do by weight, so thicker fonts, that kind of stuff. So as you're going through, you can start changing and looking at fonts. You want to be able to do something like this now. This is a perfect example of what you can do with me, is that you can zoom and actually design together, which is really, really cool. It's going to be quite important in this time of staying safe that we do things like Zoom, and that we can share each other's screens and show you the magic in real time and work together with you to make sure that you love your logo. So this is something that we do with our clients right before we send them around one of our logo designs. We sit with them on Zoom and we go through all of our design decisions and why we did things, and explain how clever we've been to make sure that we've come up with these really cool things, and why we've chosen the colors, and how we've already checked them for ADA compliancy. And we want to also, you know, sometimes you gotta text in, you know, type in your sure no one's actually used it before. Sometimes happens where you're so awesomely clever and you're like, oh, someone else was already doing that first. That's like, you got to make sure you kind of do a little bit of research and all those kind of things as well. One of the things I also want to show you is that you can see these are editable fonts where I can change the name, and I can put in and change the you know, the letters and that kind of stuff. So that's an editable font. And one of the things that I want to show you that is really, really, really important is how that I can change this into artwork. And I was telling you guys earlier, someone was saying, what happens with my fonts is when I send something like a Word document or whatever, the fonts get all screwy, or they turn into default fonts, or they don't look good. It's because the font is not loaded on the other person's machine, and they don't have it. So it has to default to something they do have. So there's default fonts for all web browsers and so forth. So one of the things you can do for your logo is turn it into outlines, which turns it into artwork. So if I go up to, first you got to select the text, and then I go up to type and I hit create outlines. It then actually turns this into artwork, and it's not editable any longer. I can't add or change the letters, but what I can do is click on with the selection tool and show you that it's now pieces of artwork. And each one of these now is a piece of artwork, so that it's not really a font any longer. I can't edit it, I can't change its font, I can't change its size, I can't change anything about it. But what I can do is start playing with it. So if I take the minus tool and I start taking away, I can start making my own font, right? And then once it's an artwork, and I can also add a gradient to it, I can, you know, play around with its color. I can do a lot of different things with this. And with these tools, you can actually manipulate with the pen tool any font the way you want it to be super custom. So if you find a font that you like, but there's something about it that's a little bit weird, or it's got a strange, you know, something going on, or, you know, you want to say round a corner because you don't like this, you know, something about it, you can start playing with these things and become its own font really, really quickly. And then you can actually use the font itself on the website. And you would have to work with someone who knows this pen tool, because quite honestly, it is a very difficult tool to use if you've not used it for a million years. It's still very difficult for me sometimes because it is challenging. It's just it's a tool that is tricky to get into. But I wanted to show you that you can play around and you can change the lettering and you can change the sizing and you can do all these different things with it, so that you can create your own custom letters, right? So that is something you should know when you're working with a designer, is that you say, well, I don't really like that tip or that swoosh or that, you know, whatever it might be. Or, you know, if this is back down to original, I can change the font now because I've gone backwards enough. So for example, if I change this to artwork, and get rid of the I, right? And then I can put in my own shape. And you can customize anything you guys are doing any way you want. So just kind of note that you can put gradients on these things. You could turn them, they're literally artworks. You can do whatever you want with the font, so that you can customize a font and make it your logo name. And that's something I do a lot, is like we take a font and then we tweak it. We make it unique. We make it really, really cool. Does that come with an undo button? Well, you can just do yes. So I know the software really well. I actually took Adobe Illustrator way back, and I want to say the year 1999, 2000. I started at a .com, and I knew Photoshop really, really well. I self-taught it, but Illustrator was so tough because the pen tool is really challenging, and itself that it's not pixels, it acts very different. Again, I'm designing with math, and math is not my friend. And so to get to know this program has taken 20 years to be really good at it and to know how to export things. And that's why professional graphic designers should be used in this process, because there is so much to remember, to zoom in. I can't tell you how many times when I go to print with a business card, I print it like 15 times and I make sure the settings are right. And I double, triple check everything before I go to press. And then I export the high-res PDF with its settings in CMYK. And I make sure that those files are going to be perfect on print. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you can have things that come back and you've paid, I don't know, let's say $400 for a ton of business cards, and they don't have the bleeds on them, and there's this white line around them, and you have no idea what a bleed is, and you didn't know you needed one, right? So there's a lot of different things that, yeah, so Anne says it's similar to using CAD. It's very similar. It's probably the same technology. I also wanted to show you that there's lots of different things you can do with the way that we kind of translate some of the branding. So I'm going to walk you guys through the branding kind of package that we do here at Neff Creative. We did this for a company called Provisions Mercantile. They just opened up down in West Asheville, right on, I want to say it's Hayward. I forget the address. So Provisions Mercantile started with us, gosh, a while ago, because they had been planning this for a while. They were at the Biltmore Park Town Square for a while. Now they're over in West Asheville. So we started working with them, and at the time we were doing 5 different designs for round 1. And this is what we came up with for the round 1 of their logo package, showing that they wanted something that was a 1920s, 40s kind of classic feel with fonts and so forth. You'll see that there's different types of taglines, there's different types of fonts, there's all kinds of borders. So from there we went to round 2. And this is where we started narrowing it down and started providing different ideas. We wanted to use copper and silver, and we started working on different things for, of course, this area here is Asheville, North Carolina. We also wanted to make sure that it was very t-shirt and mug and also very tourist friendly, so that they could bring home something that had Asheville on it, as we all know that the tourists here in Asheville love to bring something that has Asheville on it home. Of course they should. So this is kind of where we were on round 2, and then we moved over to round 3. And we started really narrowing down their design and started thinking about different, again, all kinds of different taglines and that kind of stuff as well. So that's kind of where we go. And then finally we got to the chosen design, and this is their finalized design that you'll see in West Asheville now. And this store is just opened up. They're doing like southern, really charming southern home goods and really unique gifts. And they are focusing a lot on local providers as well. So they are a really cool little store that just opened up. So check them out if you can. But that's an example of a finalized style guide, where how we got there is, working through all of these kind of like what he wants, what he likes, what works, thinking about things, taking the time to really print things out and to think about the taglines and so forth. So Provisions also has their colors and their social media icons, and that's kind of an example of a modern day logos being designed. I also did this one recently for the Davis Law Group, and shows you a totally different kind of feel too. Obviously, lawyers are going to have a little bit of a different feel than a gift store, but they're got their own thing going on. So that is another style guide with these different social media icons, the reverse logos, the stacked logos. We have 2 different types of horizontal logos and their icon and so forth. And so this is my style guide in CMYK. And you can see what we did here is also making sure that you use an element to create the spacing. So everything to the eye, oops, that one's all screwed up right there. I moved it around the other day. So you can see that everything's been spaced out perfectly to create the logo and to make it pleasingly aesthetic with using math as kind of the spacers to make sure that everything is done so that there is kind of math-based spacing and so forth. And then these are called design elements, and I use these in my graphic design. Those are also included in the branding package, because you do want to have graphic design elements, not just your logo, but like design brand elements. It's not just a logo, it's a brand that we're designing here. So it's really, really important. And again, this is showing you RGB colors, the hex colors, and the CMYK colors. Now, note to self, everything on press gets darker. So when you do see the CMYK that we provide, usually this is this becomes lighter, and we tend to print it here and keep tweaking this until we have what we feel is going to match the screen. So you have a consistency in your brand colors on and off line so that your website matches your business card. This is really, really important so that you don't have like a dark navy blue and a royal blue. You have the same blue. Like, this is really important to me. It should be really important to you, right? And so you also want to remember what fonts you have and what the tracking was and that kind of stuff. And then also social media icon, you really want to be able to have a standalone on that. We're wrapping up here. It is almost 5 o'clock, so we have 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Carrie said she texted me. All right. Carrie, I didn't get your text yet, so make sure you got 828-575-7731 is my text. That's my cell phone number. So one of the things that normally we would be giving out you guys some, things to take home and the projects, obviously with the way things are, the webinars are a little bit different setup. I again do 1 hour free consultations. No strings attached. I like to talk. I like to teach people. I love to share knowledge. There's a lot going on. All of us are small businesses. We could all use a little help right now. And I understand more than anybody how hard it is right now to spend money and to feel like you need to market. And it's crippling sometimes to know that you got to spend money to make money. And all of us are in this kind of situation where we're trying to figure out what to do with our finances and what's going on. And it is confusing. But one of the things I can do as somebody who's been doing small business in marketing and also kind of corporate business for a very long time, I got 20 years of experience doing this, running creative director, marketing director for companies, is looking at your budget, figuring out where to spend your dollars, and kind of figuring out all those little things that maybe is the right way to go. And sometimes it might be maybe pull back on your Google ads or maybe start running Google ads. It depends on who your demographics are, where are they, where are the traffic? Do you have all of your social media looking good? Is everything cleaned up? Have you worked on your website lately? Is it mobile friendly? I can't tell you how many people are like coming to me and go, oh, I finally need a mobile website. And you're like, oh, yes, you really do. There's something called user experience design, which I also do, which is an audit on your website, which is, okay, we need to clean this up, and this is this up, and this needs to become ADA compliant, and this is not good, and this is why it should be this way, and we should really work on your onboarding of your clientele, and what are you doing when they onboard, and are you doing a newsletter? Is that newsletter friendly, mobile friendly? There's a lot of different things that a brand needs to do right now to make sure that they've cleaned up their act all throughout their websites. They're making sure their mobile site's fantastic right now, is huge. Making sure your MailChimp or ActiveCampaign newsletter is branded and doing well, and you're communicating with your customers, or you're starting a new business. It is a challenging time right now, but it is really important to do the branding and to get that nailed down, because once it's done, and it's really easy once I have the Vector logo to create something like a business card, or to whip out a some type of like brochure or rack card for the company. Business cards are obviously crucial as well, that people need to have. And if you have a new logo, don't use your old logo. Make sure you recycle those nicely. One of the things you want to do is be consistent. So if you're trying to transition, try to make a date on the calendar for the brand new logo to launch. I really want to emphasize this, that you don't want to have two different logos out there. So if you want to put up a new logo, you have a date on the calendar where you change it everywhere. That means all the social media channels, your Google My Business, everything. And right now with the branding messages and people creating companies and staying on top of the marketing messages right now, check in to make sure your website matches your Google My Business hours. If you're reopening and you have to check, make sure your Facebook hours and all those places that your company information is also updated. So you're not forgetting all those little places that could be. You don't want to confuse people ever. You want to make sure that your messaging is clear and that everyone's staying safe and doing what they can to get through all this right now. So again, it is now almost 5 o'clock. If you have any last questions, now's a good time to ask about logos. So yeah, Vector, make sure you do your logo in Vector format, make sure it's ADA compliant with the colors. Try to be unique, and as we can talk a little bit about trademarking. So once you do have your logo and you're done with it, you want to make sure that you have the copyrights to it, and that it's all yours and it's original and so forth. And then you can go trademark it. Trademarking services are available online and they do take a while. You can submit your logo to be trademarked. If you're going to be a small company and not too worried about it, most people I know don't trademark their stuff. But if you're a more national chain, or you're planning to be a national chain, I highly recommend starting the trademark process, which allows you to add the TM to your logo as it's trademarked. All graphics that are designed, that are original, are automatically copyrighted by the company that designs them, and you can get the copyrights in part of your package. But you want to make sure you own the copyrights to all of your logos as well, so that you can use them without any hesitation as well. Any other questions? Linda says, do I build the website before doing the branding? Absolutely not. Linda, no, don't build your website. You can start working on your website, but honestly, the branding will affect everything. So I highly recommend branding and logo first. Nail that down, get your colors, get your fonts, get your look and feel, work out your mission statement, get your stuff together so you know exactly who you're dealing with, who your target audience are, who your demographics are. Because if you're marketing to everyone, you're not marketing to anyone. So you really need to figure out who your clientele is, what age, what sex, where they live, what's their income. Figure out who your clientele, your ideal client, your ideal customer. Figure out who that person is, and then dedicate some time to your marketing so that you know how to present your company to the world with the right company name, with the right tagline, so that people know when they pick up your card, you want to be like, oh, I see. Okay, great. This is fantastic. I know exactly what you do. And you want to be able to have that like no-brainer thing happening. You don't want to make people go, I still don't really know what to do. That happens sometimes when I get a business card, I'm like, not so sure what you're doing. And you want to make sure that if your card has your services on it, you want to think about your business card. It's a really important step as well. My card is made to be super nice, and it's got a velvet finish, and it's super thick, and it's great, but you can't write on it. So I have this issue with the fact that you can't write on top of my card. Anne says, can I remove an old website that was designed by a previous owner and is not permanent now? Well, that's a whole other tech question. Websites. I also teach a Squarespace website class coming up next Thursday through AV Tech. I teach Squarespace 7.1 class. We're going to be designing from scratch a brand new Squarespace website. That's a whole other conversation for making sure everything's ADA compliant and fast for Google, and it's got a great user experience or customer experience. Again, you want to make sure you design everything for your brand online to also reflect the customer's experience. I teach a lot of user experience, customer experience, which means paying attention to what they do, how they shop, how they surf, what they're looking for, the keywords that they search for. Make sure you rank for those keywords, and then make sure when they get to your website, it's branded, it looks good, but you lead them through the website and you make sure that they take action with call to actions, and everything that you provide is going to be a seamless experience, that you've tested your forms, that the onboarding process is seamless and it's nice and it's clear and it's easy. If you go to my website, it's really simple. And it's for a reason, because we don't need lots of bells and whistles these days. We just need straightforward answers, and we want to know what to do, where to go, and just tell me what I need to do and click here kind of stuff, And when you do all these things, you also want to make sure it's done for Google. So Google likes it when you actually make your links say what you're going to get on their side. So not just click here, but it's like view portfolio. So you know that you're not wasting a click, or people are bouncing because it's not what they wanted. So there's a lot of different things you can do your website to clean up the user's experience. I also teach a UX class through AV Tech. We're not doing that until next fall. So, but I have a whole seminar that I taught at WordCamp last year in Asheville on my website under my blog about user experience design, tips and issues for both designing for Google for speed and for clarity and for all that kind of technical stuff, but also for your customers, because when they come to your website, everything you do for your website is really important, especially the speed. And so the graphics that you have, your logo files, your JPEGs, your PNGs, everything on your website needs to be alt tagged. It has to have the contrast for ADA compliancy, and it needs to be lightning fast, so the kilobytes have to be done, and it needs to be retina display. So there's a balance between making sure it looks really good and is also a lower file size. So this graphics part is really, really important stuff for how fast your site loads, and that's the first experience people have, especially on their cell phone, is waiting for your site to load. How fast does it load on my cell phone is the first experience I have with your brand. And And I can't emphasize this enough that if someone's waiting around for your website, you're going to lose their business. Your site has to load in 4 seconds or less. And one of the ways that you can work on your graphics is to make sure that the speed of those graphics are good. So again, scalable vector graphics for your logo will help with that, especially if you have a really streamlined, slick new logo. Make sure your logo is an SVG file. So if you have a web designer or web developer that you work with, say, is my logo an SVG file? And they're going to go, what? And you go like, SVG, you need an SVG. And so I can basically tell you that sometimes you might come across the fact that you like your logo, but it wasn't done correctly and it's in pixel format. And so our company has vectorized lots of pixeled logos as well that were not done in the right format. So if you are hiring someone or you're working with someone, make sure your logo is in a vector format, in the Illustrator format, and that you're going to get your social media icon developed at the same time, because that's like really crucial right now. Again, it's going to be your fave icon on the website. So I'm going to make sure there's any more questions. Any more questions? It's after 5 now, so I'm going to wrap up so everyone can get back to dinner. Okay, so it looks like we're good on questions. I just wanted to thank you guys for all sticking with me today. I know it's 2 hours long webinar. Again, my name is Heather Neff and I run Neff Creative, and it's neffcreative.com, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me. There's a booking software on my website to book a 1-hour consultation, totally free, no obligation. Again, I just like to give people advice on what to do, as I have tons of experience on helping small businesses get to that next step and to make sure that you're successful. We partner with people all the time to make sure that we can be kind of like an on-demand marketing director. We have 15-minute minimums, so you can only hire us for 15 minutes if you want. And it works out for a lot of companies in the small companies in the Asheville area or the Western North Carolina area to hire me as an on-demand marketing and graphics expert. So if they just need something quick for a newsletter, I can format it. It takes me 45 minutes. That's the bill they get at the end of the month is 45 minutes. And so it's a really kind of convenient way to get some marketing done, some graphic design done, and done correctly. That's a huge part of it, is making sure your files are in the right format, the right sizes. It's got bleeds. Again, bleeds are something where they crop it down. You got to make sure the files are done correctly for print. And I really want you guys to be successful so that your logos are done in the right way, in the right formats, and they are unique and special to you, and that your branding really represents you and who you are and is really heartfelt. So from my company to yours, I wish you guys nothing but the best right now and the best luck. So I'll talk soon. And again, follow up with me at any point. And thanks, Stacy. She said she learned lots. All right, awesome. You guys are great. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming out tonight and getting online to hang out with me. And again, follow up with me anytime. I'm seriously eager to talk to you about anything you might have. And I'm going to make sure I hit all these buttons off. Okay, thanks guys. I just want to say thank you so much for everything, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.